The composer Max Reger was a man of many parts. He was a contrapuntal genius, an avant-garde pioneer, and yet also a composer of warm character music redolent of the 19th century. He left a vast and disparate musical legacy that has been difficult to comprehend. Reger was also a man of many troubles. He was nervous and compulsive and died relatively young. He felt he would not receive the attention that he deserved, and indeed he was beset by adverse criticism. But some people have always loved his music, among them Paul Hindemith, who described him as the last giant in music.
Karl Krebs in Der Tag, Berlin, 15. November 1905. Wenn mir ein neues Stück von Reger bevorsteht, kriege ich immer etwas Herzklopfen. Denn man weiß nie, was da kommen wird. Bald schreibt er wie ein zulpendes Kind, bald wieder so, dass man meint, die Ausführenden seien irrsinnig geworden und gingen darauf aus, sich gegenseitig Possen zu spielen.
Looks like music, it sounds like music, it might even taste like music, yet it remains stubbornly not music.
A kind of intellectual, over-thought music of a clever man and largely about nothing.
Reger war nicht hörbar, nur lesbar. Ich glaube selbst nicht, dass er Ohren hatte. Ja, ich bezweifle, dass er als Mensch existierte.
Reger is a sort of a musical cyclops, a strong, ugly creature bulging with knotty and unshapely muscles, an ogre of composition, a swollen, myopic beetle with thick lips and sullen expression, crouching on an organ bench. That's Paul Rosenfeld writing in 1920 about Reger. So, how do we reconcile the Reger that's described in that rather horrible review with the Reger that could compose this? And it's pure Schubert. And most of the work is transparent and beautifully scored and full of gorgeous melodies. I'll just show you the beginning of the third movement, which Reger himself considered the most beautiful thing he had written to up until that time. And then on the other hand, you have works like this Symphonic Fantasy and Fugue for Organ, Opus 57, which is called the Inferno, and it is indeed, it even looks like an inferno. Just the very opening. And so on. I mean, this is as far as possible from as one can get. And this goes on for 13 minutes of the most torturous chromatic meanderings and wailings and indeed Dante-esque chromatic struggles, and stretches already at the beginning all known boundaries of tonality.
It's not quite enough to say that Reger wrote beautiful melodic music on the one hand and ugly chromatic ravings on the other. The Inferno is certainly avant-garde, but Reger imbued it, and all his most difficult music, with beauty. But what does it mean to be avant-garde?
In my opinion, Reger's organ work were at the top of the avant-garde at his time, especially during the beginning of his career. He died in 1916. I think the first atonal piece of Schönberg is from 1908 or 9, I'm not totally sure. But before, let's say, the Symphonic Fantasy, Opus 57 of 1901, as far as I know the literature, it is in several senses more modern than the production of Mahler or Strauss at the same time. There is, for example, the first chord of the Symphonic Fantasy, which in terms of pitch class set of Mr. Alan Ford is identical to the so-called Elektra chord of the Strauss opera Elektra, which has been written a few years later, etc. And as for irregularity of rhythm and independence of bar lines and this irregularity of accents and absence of traditional metrical scheme, I think that he was really at the top of the avant-garde during, let's say, from 1901 to 1905. I don't know exactly.
At his time, Reger was extremely influential. For instance, in the concert series Schönberg and his friends organized in Vienna, Reger was the most frequently performed composer. But also, for instance, the young Szymanowski was very much influenced by Reger, and some of his pieces almost sound like Reger. In Reger's music, modulation is constant. However, he didn't think that that was only a very modern thing. He already found examples for that in Bach's writing. And there is, for instance, this little comment he wrote on the side of a Bach chorale where he wrote, "Bach, you should be happy that you are dead already, otherwise critics would criticize your harmonic development."
Is it right to criticise Reger for being either too modern or not modern enough? Some of Reger's music has a polished harmonic sheen like Hollywood film music from the 1950s. Other pieces are barely tonal, but this indefinability can attract people to his music.
Mein erster Eindruck von Max Reger geht in meine Studienzeit zurück. Schon damals arbeitete ich zusammen mit meinem Pianisten, dem Herrn Renzikowski, und er hatte irgendwo in einem Antiquariat das Lied Mein Traum von Reger gefunden. Und wir haben dann immer den Anfang gespielt, der ganz wunderbar war, und dann haben wir das Ende auch sehr geliebt, und in der Mitte wurde es doch irgendwie sehr kompliziert. Und dann haben wir uns gefragt, sind eigentlich alle Reger-Lieder so, die sowieso keiner sang? Und wir haben uns dann angefangen, damit zu beschäftigen, und nach wuchs unser Staunen und unsere Begeisterung dafür.
Ich habe als Schülerin im Bonner Bachchor den Einsiedler gesungen und habe während der Proben nichts verstanden. Und mein großes Aha-Erlebnis war bei der ersten Hauptprobe, als alle Stimmen mit dem Orchester zusammenkamen. Da merkte ich, das ist ein grandioses Werk.
I was very fortunate to have as my teacher and mentor Brian Runnett, organist at Norwich Cathedral, until his untimely death at the age of 35 in 1970. In fact, he was one of the first British organists to really champion the works of Reger. The day before he died, he played the Variations on Fugue on an Original Theme, Opus 73, at Westminster Abbey, and I turned pages for him. From that time onwards, I really felt it was my destiny to play the works of Max Reger as much as I could, and that's what I've done all my life.
Themes of destiny and early death are appropriate in this film. Reger made great demands of himself. He worked himself to the limit, both composing and performing, and he drank, chain-smoked cigars, and ate compulsively. In some respects, his life was a one-way ticket to the hyper-romantic Isle of the Dead, and there aren't that many artists who will take you on such an intense journey.
So this is a completely manic life, and Reger felt that he was not going to live very long. He was often talking about Mozart and Mendelssohn, Chopin and others who died so young, and he said, "We don't have much time."
Reger lived at a time when the arts and society were exploding with different influences and perspectives. No wonder much of his greatest work is in the form of variations, different ways of seeing the same thing. He went over seemingly the same ground again and again, and yet he never repeated himself and always found a new vantage point.
So here we're standing in front of printed editions of Reger's music, piano music, orchestral music, organ music, by opus number. And there are many multiple editions here, as well as piano arrangements of orchestral works and so on. But look at this. This is really quite something. And then here, these are facsimile copies of the original autographs of Reger, and by no means complete. There are many, many opuses which are missing. But when you look at this, you get an idea of the unbelievable, staggering creativity that this man had, and that does not even take in the fact that he would often give up to 150 concerts or so a year, which would be enough for just a performing musician. That's on the limit. Forget the composing and the hundreds of students that he also had.
By the time of his death, at the age of just 43, Reger had written 1,000 distinct compositions in a limitless range of styles and in every genre except opera. He had given thousands of concerts all over Germany and from London to St. Petersburg, and he had made a fortune from the publication and performance of his music. But his fame has not lasted, and most audiences know little about him.
It is often questioned whether Reger was a great composer. I think when looking at him more intimately, one soon realizes that his technical abilities not only, but also his musical achievements are so widespread that he really can be called a great composer. The problem is he wrote on such a huge scale, from the tiniest little piece for violin solo until the hugest vocal orchestral score, that virtually nobody knows really very much of his music.
In this film, I aim to put that right by revealing the vast extent of Reger's music. I aim to establish that, yes, Reger was a great composer whose music we must revive and cherish, and perhaps even to come back to that quote from Hindemith, that in music he was indeed the last giant.